Good morning and welcome to FSI the podcast. Interesting conversations with people who are worth having them with. I'm joined today by Leili McMurrough, and she's going to tell us a little bit about herself as it relates to all the many things she's doing in funeral service. She is going to be one of the presenters at Momentum, which is the Women's Leadership Accelerator event that is going to take place September 23rd, 24th, and that will be in Celebration, Florida. It is positioned as a mini MBA for women in death care, and it's going to have very focused, high impact education for those seeking to really take their leadership knowledge and business acumen to the next level. It's going to be an accelerator for growth and with a female focus. So we're really excited about that and about having Leili as a part of that. So welcome, Leili.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about you.
So I am a licensed funeral director and embalmer. I'm also a licensed attorney. Right now, I am the president of Washington College of Mortuary Science, which is located right outside of Chicago. I've held that role for about over 10 years now, which feels like, my goodness, how did that happen? I also am co-owner of McMurrough Funeral Chapel in Libertyville, Illinois, as well, too. Finishing up my PhD at Johns Hopkins, and a mom of two daughters, both now preteens. So very busy.
Well, I just heard that you have an abundance of time. That's how that just hit my ear. So, and how long have you worked within the funeral service space, the death care space?
So I started in 2009. I was finishing up. I was in my third year of law school, and then I started mortuary school in that same year, and then finished that, and then got licensed right after that. So we're going on close to 20 years at this point in time.
Okay. And in the time that you have been leading Worsham, which was for a total of how many years so far?
A little over. I've been at Worsham now about 12 years, and I've been in leadership for the last 10.
Now, have you noticed a lot of change during your time at Worsham as far as, I know the obvious is the entrance into funeral service. You know, we're seeing females more predominantly, which to me is a return to how it was originally. It's not like this new occurrence within death care. It's kind of like it's circling back to the way it originally was. But besides those numbers, what are a couple of the changes you've noticed in those who are coming into our field of work?
I think the biggest change that I see so frequently is that the new person coming in has zero funeral home experience. So I think that most people have this understanding in the general public that funeral is almost like, passed down over time, right? Generation to generation, and that you were born into this field. 90% of our students across the country are first generation funeral directors. So they are not kind of coming in with that experience. What I've seen, what that really does to the classroom experience is those conversations that used to happen of like what they're doing at the funeral home or how we do things, how we run things. They're not happening anymore because that's not the experience. So those kind of like where you learn as you go type of thing, or you kind of learn from your peers. Now all of that is happening at the apprenticeship level or kind of at their first jobs. So they're not coming in with that base of knowledge. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just one of those things that it's just changing kind of the conversations that have to happen at the funeral home.
And I'm sure too within education, because of the expectation to provide context. Because if you're describing things, within the scope of what they're learning, to connect those dots when they've not seen or participated in some of those things, there's like an added layer of context application that I think educators have to provide.
Absolutely. When you think about it, something as simple as like the process of an arrangement conference, you can walk them through it and like it makes sense. You can talk it through, you can go step by step with the students, but then to actually see it in action and then to put words to it and to actually move through it in that seamless fashion that, funeral directors do, that's a big leap for them. So much so that what we started doing is we put together movie nights for the students where we filmed arrangement conferences. And I wanted them to understand, because I kept getting that question of, is there a script? What do I do? Like, can I follow this? And you understand more than most where it's like, the script isn't it. It's about being genuine. It's about being real in the moment. It's about listening and understanding that, yes, we have these things that need to get done, but we have to be present and we have to be able to like adjust as we learn from the person that's sitting across from us. So those subtleties, have become so important, I think, on the education side of making those making that real for the students, making it so that they're going, okay, I have to be present and understanding. We just
Mm-hmm.
did this with the students the other day, and I told them, I said, one of the things that you have to realize is you might be the last person to hear this other person's story. And that you have to listen to feel, because when they're going through this kind of person's life, they're recounting it to you. And you are the person that's taking that in and kind of then being able to direct them from that and go, based on this, what about this? Have you thought about doing this? And that comes from listening. And that comes from being an authentic, genuine person. And it's one of the things I love most about funeral service, is that being able to hold space for that person that's gone and being the last person that might be the keeper of those stories in a way. And I love that. There's a beauty to that.
For sure. And I feel like just even when they're just sharing like the days or the journey of illness or what kind of got them even there, like having
Yes.
someone just listen to them, kind of themselves and just share like, and I've been on the other side of that table in recent years, and that level of exhaustion and just the whole just depth of where your days bleed together and you're talking to this person and you're trusting them with something so important, which is your person, and then with your very vulnerable raw side of your family, of your
Yes.
dynamic, of you, because you
Yes.
may not have showered in a week. So I mean,
Yeah.
I think too, when they recognize how important that is and how sacred that is, that's going to help them be that much more effective
And
too.
that's the point, though, is that we have to talk about that at the school
Mhm.
level, because that's one of those missing pieces. Because if you're not working at a funeral home, or if you haven't experienced that, because a lot of them too might not even experienced a death at this point in time, so they're coming in and it's like they have their drawn to this field, but there's still kind of a wall in some ways where they might not have experienced it. They don't know really what they're walking into. And so again, I think it's really making that visible to them, making that kind of that moment where you go, this matters and here's why, and
Mhm.
explaining the context to them has become very important to me, and something that we focus on a lot at Worsham in particular.
Well, that's good to know that you guys are incorporating that, as we should be, so that when they go out into the wild, they're not completely taken aback or taking
Exactly.
orders, right? That's how I always say, when you leave the nest, when you
Yes.
leave here and you leave the nest and we release
Yes.
you into the wild, right?
I tell them it's time to fly.
Yes. It's like, bye. But
Bye.
yes. And then furthering basically your work within education is your participation in with not just Momentum. I've seen you participating in other events that are helping to further the profession. But what is it about Momentum that you feel is worthy of your time and worthy for attendees to come?
What I loved about it was that it was a focus on what women can do. I think there's so many of these wonderful conventions out there, and these moments of time where we get together and network and do all of that. What I thought was really unique about this in particular was this idea of like, let's do it now. So instead of just kind of having these conversations and kind of taking a step back and kind of coming together, now it's like, let's move to action. So let's really start to see, how do we move that needle and see women start to, get roles in leadership, so that it's not just something where it's like, this is unique or interesting, but it's the norm. And I think
Hmm.
that there's something about this where it's designed in that way. I also like the fact that it's just designed in a way where it's like your time matters. So there's a lot that they're packing into kind of this like one kind of day event where you're like,
Hmm.
this is powerful, and it's going to be like you're going to go from session to session, and it's going to be kind of this idea of like each one will be powerful and with real takeaways that you can
Hmm.
actually go home and do. And that to me is just something really unique and interesting.
Yeah, not only is the content going to be very focused and very, I'm not going to say purposeful, because there are, purposeful sessions and other events and things like that. But, there's the time to network and socialize the night prior, which is great. But then the next day, it's like you're all students, right? You're going to come in, you're
Yes.
going to get ready to learn, and your deliverables are going to be what you do when you leave with that information. And because it's only in that day, it's really much easier to release someone on your team to attend and have that staff whole very temporarily, because they're going to go,
Absolutely.
and then what they bring back to you will make it that much more worthwhile in their own performance and their, initiatives they're able to take, and increased understanding basically of what, a woman in a leadership, on the leadership path, some of the things to be considered, and the skills to hone and things like that.
Absolutely. And when you think about it, our graduating classes now are 75% women. So it is one of those things, like if we're not nurturing those skills and if we're not talking about them and making them kind of at the forefront, that is our next generation of leaders. So we have to make sure we're cultivating that and creating spaces where those conversations can happen and where they can flourish and where we can start to go, okay, this is our next real kind of base of leaders.
Yeah, because we've already kind of gotten to the point now where it's not like, oh, I can't get into the field. And I'm not saying that there are not still areas or firms that are resistant to perhaps having females on the team. And I mean, I'm not everywhere is like a magical welcome, come everyone. I get that. I think it's easier now than it probably was like in the 90s, when I was looking for an internship and it felt like it took forever to find somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's nice about this is, instead of marinating or just sitting in the, oh, we've got to open the door, and this is okay, we're holding the door open, but now what needs to come next, right?
Yes.
Which is like the growth that happens with the opening of said door.
And
And I know your
realizing you're not
session.
alone.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And it's realizing you're not alone. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the other thing too. I think before it was kind of like you were the isolated woman on a team, or you were the one that was like, okay, what do I do next? Now we're coming together. There's a
Mm-hmm.
real powerfulness to that as well.
For sure. And your session is entitled From Essential to Influential: Women Leading the Business of Funeral Service. So can you tell us a little bit about what attendees can expect from your session?
Yeah, what I'm excited about is kind of really looking at that gap between those two things where, when you think about it, for a long time, women have been involved in so much of the work of funeral service and kind of the everyday. But I think a lot of times they're not necessarily in the leadership decisions. So this is really about claiming that seat at the table and feeling comfortable and confident in doing that. And understanding that like you don't have to have all the answers to have that seat at the table. I think a lot of times women hold themselves back, or they go,
Mm-hmm.
I'll get there when I'm ready, or I need to do a little bit more, when their counterparts don't always do that. They're jumping in and they're having those conversations earlier, or they're just saying, well, I'll figure it out. So this is about really kind of understanding that you already have the language, that confidence. Now it's moving that into like the influence and making sure that you also have the business acumen and the understanding of what they're talking about, so you can be taken seriously right away at the very beginning, because that's the foundation of leadership, is actually having a seat at the table. You can get through that doorway. And I was talking to other people, I said it's different if you're at the kids table, right? So you can be in the
Mm-hmm.
room, but if you're sitting at the kids table and you're looking over there and the conversations are happening at the other end, it's time to move over there, and it's time to pull up your chair and sit down and say, I belong here. Not only just because I've been doing this job for a while, but sometimes that comes with confidence, communication, all of those things. So, and also to understand that we're not trying to make you something that you're not, but these are really natural places where you belong. And it's about access, it's about support. And it's really this idea for me. I just love this idea of moving from essential, because they're already essential, to
Mm-hmm.
influential. So you're
Mm-hmm.
moving from that kind of daily stuff to like, what are the real business decisions that are being made, and making sure your voice is heard there.
I think that's fantastic, because research has shown that women are often waiting to be seen, and for people
Yes.
to in leadership to notice like their worthiness or their experience, or basically say, hey, okay, come over here and join us, right?
Yes.
Um, Instead of saying, hey, I'm going to come sit with you all.
Yeah.
And you'll see the same thing when it comes to even pursuing a leadership role or a position. And again, this is data-driven information, but like a woman, if she doesn't feel like 100% confident that she could just do that, where, based on where she is right then within her career, she won't even apply, right?
Yes.
Whereas a man will be like, I'm going to go for this. Like, I may be missing a component they're looking for, but you know what? I'm going to throw my name in the hat anyway. And it's that difference in basically owning your career trajectory and not waiting on other people to steer it for you, but instead saying, if I don't do something with it, it's my responsibility and I have the power to move into those places I want to be in.
Exactly. I think that I really want this session to feel practical, to feel honest. And then this idea that like you walk out understanding your own value. Because if you believe it, if you walk out and go, yeah, of course I belong at that table. Why wouldn't I? It makes things so much easier. Because yes, we need to understand how businesses operate and kind of the language and all those different things. But if you lack the confidence to walk into that room and have a seat, then what are we even doing? So to me, that's really those piece that we have to have that conversation about, is that you belong and you have to own that from day one.
Well, I'm really excited about your session because it sounds like you're making a needed leap into territory where I think we're still waiting, like I said, to be noticed, or waiting until we feel like we can do it perfectly.
Yes,
and I think
exactly.
That's the thing too. Women are, and that's just a generalization, but women tend to have a little bit of perfectionist fantasy, which is not all entirely our fault. A lot of it is societally driven. But with that in mind, it can sometimes be a hindrance, I think. So
absolutely. Yes.
Yes. So I'm really excited about this and the other sessions. Remember to mark your calendars, September 23rd to 24th. 24th, you better come with your notepad and be ready to put in some work. It's going to be very exciting. The women that are slated to speak are experienced and influential within their organizations, and they're going to be able to share a lot of things that will help their journeys will save you time in yours, because they're going to be able to tell you not just what it took for them to get there, but they're going to give you nuggets of gold that you can then incorporate into your own career and your own experience. So I want to thank Lily for talking to us today about her session and for agreeing to be part of the Momentum event.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity and having me.
Yes. So we'll see you in Celebration, Florida.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.